fact, the bodies of all living things, both plant and animal, are alive with electricity. Not high-voltage charges, but an elaborate network of very subtle undercurrents.
All our signalling and motor muscle systems are based on electricity. So when signals come from your fingers, when you touch something, to your brain, they're electric signals travelling up. If you wiggle your fingers, it's electric signals going down to the muscles of the hand to make them wiggle. So all our signalling systems, and indeed our very thoughts, are electrical in their origin. Electricity is a life force. We don't know of life that functions without it.
Electricity serves life in several ways. At the most direct, it can be just a weapon. Amazonian eels accumulate 1,000 volts in a series of flat muscle plates. And they can discharge this in a single burst, strong enough to make a powerful impression.
Right, now everybody join hands. That's right. Now you're connected in series. Now there are 5 of you. That means that each of you will receive just 1/5 of the total voltage of the eel. Now, relax. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to have you meet a group of confirmed believers in electric eels.
Plants use electricity in more subtle ways. They may lack a nervous system for conducting signals, but they respond in much the same way as animals, making some surprisingly rapid movements. Signals travel through the Venus flytrap at just 1 inch a second, but that's still fast enough to catch a frog. At Imperial College in London, Professor Andrew Goldsworthy is exploring the degree to which plants rely on electricity. By putting one electrode into the stem of a geranium and another into contact with the same plant's roots, he can show that a circuit exists between the two, and that this electrical connection is what gives a plant sense of its surroundings, and a system for letting all parts know when any part is subject to an outside threat. There is an immediate electrical response to such damage. An alarm spreads through the plant, triggering a range of defensive tactics, which, given the limited options open to a plant, are surprisingly intelligent.
If a plant is injured by insects, then the leaf which is damaged can send signals over the plant which make the remainder of the leaves more indigestible by producing special chemicals.
But plants don't just use electricity internally. They also react to it in the outside air, picking up the sort of information that has survival value. We know that electricity is important for cell growth. Electric currents in the earth trigger the germination of some plants, such as cherry trees, and several other species have been found to grow more rapidly, producing unusually green patches under power lines. They all seem to be sensitive to electrically charged particles in the air. And Professor Goldsworthy thinks he knows why.
Plants can predict thunderstorms by sensing the electricity in the atmosphere, which is always there even before the lightning starts to flash.
Which means plants can predict rain and prepare for it by gearing up before a downpour. They switch on their biochemical machinery, they start roots growing and leaves opening their pores, all in order to catch rainwater before it seeps away. Water, especially seawater, conducts electricity far more efficiently than air, so aquatic creatures have a distinct advantage over their relatives on land. Some use this well. Flat-bodied rays forage near the bottom where visibility is poor. Their eyes are weak, but the nose is equipped with sensors that respond directly to tiny electrical fields. Using these in the dark depths, rays are able to track and catch even fast-moving squid, just by the charge they produce while swimming. But the most electrosensitive of all living things are the sharks, who can detect electrical charges as small as a millionth of a volt. and none is more sensitive to such information than the top predator of the sea, the exquisitely adapted great white shark.
Sharks, unlike other fish or dolphins, are able to detect minute, very, very small amounts of current or electricity in the water. Some sharks can detect the electromagnetic emissions from a fish's heartbeat.
The supersense organ involved is a line of tiny, black, oil-filled pits around its nose.
We don't know exactly how they use the sensory system, although we do know for a fact that it is used, and it obviously is common to sharks and sharks only.
The shark's awareness of bioelectricity is acute. But if our electrical envelope is as conspicuous as sharks make it seem, then even out of the water, there may be ways of detecting and describing electromagnetic energy around the human body. At New York University, they are learning how to read this subtle field.
This field is very, very small. It's billions of the Earth's magnetic field, so we need special equipment to detect these fields.
The answer is a device called the squid, which can measure the field around our head generated by the human brain. The squid is so sensitive that it responds even to minute fluctuations produced by individual thoughts or changing moods. To avoid any possible interference, the squid and its subject are both housed in a special room protected against all stray radiation. Once the test is underway, all observations are made from outside the room through closed-circuit television. But first, the subject's head has to be mapped, so the squid can be positioned to surround him without touching at any point. The purpose is to measure the energy of the electromagnetic field, which projects from the brain into the space around the body. By surrounding this brain space with 148 sensors, Dr. Ribéry can use the squid to monitor brain activity from moment to moment and measure any change that takes place in response to particular stimuli.
Whatever the person is doing, whatever task is doing, it activates different nerve cells in different brain areas, so the field fluctuates. The field changes actually very quickly at the same time as we are able to record these magnetic fields and to see where the activity is coming from.
Every thought in the brain, every mood, appears to produce a different pattern in the electrical field, and the squid responds to these changes as easily as a shark does to its prey. Is it possible that we all have such an awareness of fields in one another? Some people believe so, and have traditions about such talents that are remarkably alike. In India, they suggest there are special energy centers in the body, which can be seen as spinning wheels of light they call chakra. In Russia, Konstantin Korotkov believes he can identify the moment after death when the life energy ceases to exist. In China, medical practitioners describe an energy they call qi, without which we die. And all over the world, healers insist our energy fields, rather than being produced by the body, are more or less independent of it. Science has trouble with all these ideas, but is beginning to accept they may actually deal with something real. In Oregon, physicist Ed Wagner believes he may have stumbled on a new kind of energy, one used by plants to communicate with one another. Dr. Wagner calls it a W wave. And to study it in action, he takes some simple equipment out into the forest. Here at random, he selects 2 trees of the same kind and size, about 50 feet apart. High up in each, he places a probe to record electrical activity in the trunk. Then he sets out to threaten just one of the 2 trees, but finds that impossible to do. Both trees produce an electrical response, even though only one of them is damaged by his axe.
It's very surprising that surrounding trees respond to my chopping into a tree, because presently there's no known mechanism for waves, for information to travel between trees.
The injured tree responds with a surge of energy, but the second tree, shown in red in this reconstruction, takes its time.
We get a long delay, a several-second delay, before we pick up a response in the receiving tree. These waves that travel between trees are slow-moving waves. In fact, they travel close to 5 meters per second. There's no wave that is presently recognized that travels at this kind of slow speed. The sound travels much faster. Light travels thousands of times faster, so it must be an altogether new kind of wave.
If this alarm call is not carried by sound or any other vibration, then the energy which connects the 2 trees is mysterious. Perhaps a botanical version of chi? At the University of California in Los Angeles, physiologist Valerie Hunt tracks an elusive energy, one many believe may lie behind the idea of an aura surrounding the human body.
It doesn't exist. But I found information that was so overwhelmingly different from any I had ever seen in physiology that I started to explore it.
Throughout history, in many different cultures, special individuals have been portrayed at the center of a field of light. Descriptions of it vary. Not everyone can see it, but those who do agree that the aura around those who are ill or weak looks dark. Those who are healthy and strong are thought to look more like this. The whole idea of an aura remains elusive. But in her search for a possible source of such subtle radiation, Dr. Hunt has used an instrument designed to allow astronauts on the moon to transmit news of their physiology back to mission control here on Earth.
The equipment that we used was telemetry equipment, and it measured small amounts of electrical activity coming off the body's surface. This was more sophisticated, higher frequency than anything we'd ever picked up in physiology. So I brought in 8 of the best aura readers in this country, and I had them read what they saw radiating from the surface of the body while we were taking measurements. And we found that there was a relationship between the 2 which was constant.
When the readers claimed to be able to see red in the aura, Dr. Hunt's telemetry equipment consistently recorded a particular long-wave pattern at the body's surface. And when they reported blue-tinted auras, her instruments again showed consistently shorter wavelengths emanating from the body. The machines and the aura readers agreed. Those who see auras describe them as colors. The machines simply record frequencies, but they too do so consistently.
When people say to me, I can't see it, therefore it doesn't exist, then I say to them, you can't see a radio signal, and yet you can decode it and it is there. You can't see a television signal until you have it put through a box that decodes it. Now the human is the same. Through the aura we broadcast information, and that information, if it's picked up by another person's antenna, which is their aura, and the mind decodes it and transforms it, we have information and know about the person and about the happenings.
Dr. Hunt's work remains controversial, but the connection she proposes is interesting, because a technique known as Kirlian photography now appears to be able to capture some kind of aura as an electric discharge on film. 60 years ago, a Russian technician took photographs without a camera. His images were recorded directly onto photographic plates as silhouettes caused by a high-voltage flash. The results were beautiful. A human fingertip flares like the corona around a solar eclipse, and a freshly picked leaf simply glows with energy. These have come to be called Kirlian images, after their inventor, and are now believed by some to be visible evidence of the aura. Rosemary Steele in the English Midlands is not one of these, but she is fascinated by the images and has been experimenting for 35 years with what she calls biological emissions.
Kirlian photography is the taking of a photograph with an electronic plate giving out a high frequency, high voltage field, and you put a piece of photographic paper on top of it, and then an object or a person's hand or fingertips, and it's given a quick buzz, and the interaction creates an image on the photographic paper.
The image itself is not surprising. Anything illuminated by such a charge will glow. But what is interesting is that the image of a human fingertip changes according to the well-being of the owner.
Kirlian photography can show quite a number of things that aren't necessarily visible to the naked eye. If a person is very tired, you'll have a very depleted image. If a person is on inappropriate medication, it will deplete the image. If a person is hyped up or had too much to drink, they will tend to have a more noisy, a lot of image.
Something in the body interacts with the electric charge of the Kirlian apparatus. And the result is a shifting image, which appears to mirror the mental and the physical condition of the whole person. If this is true, each image is a unique energetic fingerprint, not just of that individual, but of an energy within them at that particular moment.
Kirlian is a very new science. It's in its infancy, and as yet we have no idea of its potential. We're just beginning to scratch the surface.
The changing Kirlian images appear to reflect our state of health, and are apparently so sensitive they can go on tracking the life force even after we die. In Russia, Dr. Korotkov goes on recording Kirlian images in the morgue, taking readings from the fingertips of corpses every hour for up to 7 days following the diagnosis of clinical death. Korotkov believes that without an autopsy or any other information about a subject, he can tell from the Kirlian images alone how that person died. A calm, natural death, one for which the individual was prepared, leads to the even, steady loss of brightness within 36 hours. A sudden, violent death delays the process of energy decay, with a rapid change around 72 hours. And in cases of suicide, energy loss is prolonged and completed only when almost a week has passed.
After several years of research and experimentation, we have collected vast amounts of data that show that what we are registering is not just the electrical activity of a biological organism, but a much more complex effect. It seems to include emotional and psychological elements as well.
After years of working in the morgue, Dr. Korotkov is very familiar with the normal post-mortem changes that take place as the body cools. The changes in the energy field are quite different. And where post-mortems are required, Korotkov has found that the removal of each internal organ by the pathologist also has a marked effect on the Kirlian images, one quite different from that of a body left to decay without interference. In one subject, energy levels in the fingers fell dramatically from the moment his liver was removed. Korotkov went back to the early images and found that these too were unusual, showing a particularly bright patch when they were taken soon after death. It was the autopsy itself, and in particular the removal of the liver, that changed the energy of the whole body. Korotkov's findings reinforced the idea that Kirlian images do indeed convey something real. What they seem to show is that our elusive life energy doesn't just disappear at the moment of death. It changes in the following days in ways that reflect not only the body's health before death, but the manner of its dying, almost as though the energy field had a life cycle of its own.
We interpret the results as an indication that there is a parting of the physical body from the mental or spiritual aspect of the body. In other words, the separation of body and soul.
It seems we all produce pulsating fields that can be detected by other living things, even at a distance. Our brains produce an electromagnetic aura that projects out and can be measured beyond the confinement of the skull. And our whole bodies buzz with an energy such as chi that percolates through us along pathways that are hard to define in scientific terms. But chi and acupuncture and Kirlian images do describe such an energy complex in some detail.